Hello, this is Rashikia, and my teammates and I will be discussing the enterprise resource planning system of Moderna Inc. Okay, so Moderna Inc. was founded in 2010, so a fairly new pharmaceutical company, just founded about 12 years ago. And it was founded by R. Chen, Robert Langer, and Nubar Afian, right? It is based currently in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and its flagship facility is still there. Its second facility was opened just a few years ago in 2018 in Norwood, Massachusetts. And that facility is the one that really saw the upgrade and the update in the enterprise resource planning system, right? Moderna Inc., formerly known as Mode RNA Therapeutics, or pronounced Moderna Therapeutics, really focuses on the use of mRNA to program our body to fight particular diseases. And this is unlike any other drug or vaccine that we have that usually introduces a very weak version of a virus or a bacteria into our body to trigger our immune system to respond. Instead, this kind of acts like software engineering for the body. And it again uses a strand of mRNA to basically teach our antibodies how to recognize and fight certain diseases. Right? So, again, Moderna Inc. was just founded about 12 years ago. And one of the great things about that is that it came within the confluence of, you know, the changes in technology and the uses of enterprise resource planning systems, as well as, the changes in the cloud and the use of the cloud. So one of the great things about Moderna Inc. is that from their inception, they've been able to take advantage of this and really go into developing drugs and vaccines fairly quickly. But the question kind of begs, why is it that they decided to go that route as opposed to the traditional route that other pharmaceutical companies use? Okay, so vaccines traditionally take 10 to 14 years to really be developed, tested, and approved. And there's a lot of reasons behind this. I mean, human trials, it takes a while. They do want to make sure that the drugs don't harm or, are fatal to the body. But a few other reasons behind why it takes so long is because the traditional way of storing data and using the information is not conducive to really collaborating between teams to really get everything going, because again, the data is siloed at specific locations. And one of the great things about this is that, security, but it also kind of limits the research and development team to really collaborate with other teams to get information right away. It's not easily accessible, and it's not accessible in real time. And so if they need any sort of information, especially from other facilities, they may need to request that information to be sent over to them. And this creates a time lapse, or having an extended time to retrieve data. Another thing about that is that there might be certain data stored on certain premises that, like I mentioned, it's not available or not accessible from other teams at other facilities. And what happens is that that team might not know that the formula or something that they are currently working on is something that is already available within their system. And so that team spends a lot of time developing from scratch when that there is data, there is information in the system that can help speed up their process. but again, they don't have access to it. Another thing that really kind of thwarts, the speed and just the collaboration efforts of the research development teams, scientists, manufacturing is the inflexibility of on premise data centers, which doesn't support the expansion of high performance computation, right? With on premise data centers, or the company has to pay for more space and more servers. And especially now that we're going, we are evolving with technology and so forth, and systems, calculating formulas, it doesn't, this type of system doesn't really help or assist in the flexibility of that. And therefore, it kind of limits the research and development teams, the scientists and manufacturers, to what they do have until the company is able to expand that. Something in the same line is the inflexibility, and because of that, I should say, there's no flexibility in changing the scientific workflow between various developments of drugs. Again, they are limited to what they have on premise. A lot of people don't have access to the data, and so their scientific workflow cannot evolve or become any better because they are stuck with basically what they have. Again, with Moderna, a great thing is that they really took advantage of the the cloud system of the enterprise resource planning systems to really kind of cut out a lot of this problem. So one of the great things is that Moderna uses a cloud system, and it uses Amazon Web Services as its cloud system with in collaboration with SAP S4 HANA, right? And it uses different systems like SAP Advanced Track and Trace for pharmaceuticals, SAP Information Collaboration Hub for life sciences, and this is all a part of the SAP digital supply chain. And this is just one section of their system, right? With using their ERP systems, although they only have two facilities, scientists and research and development teams have immediate access to different data and different formulas being worked on throughout the system, and therefore they can work a lot quicker. For example, and it also provides flexibility in computation. For example, the drug design studio, right? And so sorry. So with the drug design studio, what that basically is an application that Moderna was able to integrate into their SAP system. And that drug design studio, what it does is that it takes the mRNA and the idea of what the scientist is working with, and computes it computes different type of mRNA strands that could work against a certain disease. So, for example, if a scientist is thinking about maybe working on cardiovascular disease and they've thought of different, mRNA strands that could work, they enter that into the system. The system or the application, the drug studio application, then accesses all of the stored data from all of the different drug developments that have happened, and that is stored within their system, and put together different mRNA strands and send it back to the scientists so that they can work with that to develop a drug. So it gives them the most optimal mRNA strands that may likely work, right? So that is something that is huge. And it's huge because the system allows access, real time access to all of the data in the background. Going back to the SAP S4 HANA system itself, the SAP Advanced Track and Trace for pharmaceuticals, that is something that is extremely helpful in the supply chain or digital supply chain. And what that does is that it helps Moderna to comply with international legislations intended to prevent counterfeit medications, right? So it prevents fake medications from going out by serializing these medication and storing them in a repository. And so it can be tracked, scanned and tracked as it goes through, as it's distributed, right? And another great thing is that with that, now that we have a serialization repository stored in the system, the SAP Information Collaboration Hub for Life Science, that is a cloud network that enables the collaboration for pharmaceutical supply chains and trading partners. So now all of the trading partners, all of the as well as the wholesale and manufacturers, they have access to all of this information. They have access to the medication that's been serialized and they can upload their own serialization repository, and it really cuts down on counterfeit medication. So this is one of the benefits and huge benefits of just one part of the enterprise resource system used by Moderna, right? Another great thing about SAP, which I already slightly touched on, was the fact that it can integrate other systems. So along with the SAP system, Moderna uses Workday, and Workday is usually helpful in the HR system, right? So to take on all of the employees' information, their position, what access they have in the system, and update that as they go throughout their career, as they advance, as they leave. It updates in the system and integrates it into SAP, right? Another example is Host Analytics, and Host Analytics is for budgeting and planning. Again, very useful, very helpful as it is integrated into SAP and it is readily available to all the necessary departments, right? Similarly, Okta, which is used for accounting, which is very, very huge. To have that available, especially when we're receiving or sending out, I should say, sending out bills of material, right? So these are huge, huge systems that are integrated, right, into the ERP systems. I'm just going to quickly touch on the Moderna Inc. development use case. So, one of the use cases created was the clinical development integrated with the SAP ERP, right? So, the clinical development section of it, what happens is that the development candidates from the preclinical pipeline is stored in the system. And what the development candidates are basically, they're basically the drugs that have made it to be developed, right? So once this is received, the investigational medicine office leads, they have access to that information in the system to create the clinical development plans. And these clinical development plans are used to basically update the clinical demand timelines, as well as track the supply of the good manufacturing practice and the good laboratory practice tox materials, right? With now having this plan, the supply chain manager is able to view it in the system immediately and in real time and develop a manufacturing schedule plan that is in accordance with the clinical development plans, right? And once this is developed, it is in the system and it is updated if there's any sort of updates to the clinical development plans. All right. So when this manufacturing schedule plan is developed, it displays the electronic batch records for equipment use, testing, and release that is used in the actual manufacturing process. So the systems itself, it runs on the Internet of Things, and basically it has all of the specific doses that need to be used in manufacturing a specific drug, the specific instructions, all developed and stored on the computer so that the machines in manufacturing can go ahead and start to develop these various drugs and these various vaccines, right? Another great thing is that it also creates a bill of material that is sent to finance, which of course is then sent to our suppliers so that, or Moderna's suppliers, so that those materials needed can be delivered to the various facilities, right? Another important section is the vendor, right? And the display of the time slot. So while all of this is happening, while all of the medication is being manufactured and the clinical development plans are being created, it is important that the time slot for clinical studies are updated because it is dependent on whether or not there is a glitch in the manufacturing system. And if there is a glitch, then there will be a delay, which again would require an update in the clinical demand timelines and therefore an update in the time slots available for the clinical study for vendors to go ahead and take on or book, right? So just a quick workflow here. So we receive the development candidates from the preclinical team, the IMO or the investigational medicine officer leads develop clinical development plans. The supply chain manager views the clinical development plans and creates a manufacturing schedule plan based on the clinical development plans. The supply chain manager sends the bill of material to finance, and the vendor client books a study time. The scientist collects patients' consent and clinical data and basically files for regulatory and inspection documents within the system. And that kind of ends the workflow there for the clinical development section. Okay. I will be passing it off to my next team member so that they are able to finish this off here. Thank you.
So coming to the architecture, application, and tools. So the data of the mRNA host on the AWS EC2, and the scientists of Moderna using the software DDS is known as like Drug Design Studio to access information. So simply the scientists will access the portal of software and select the messenger RNA sequence or protein sequence, connect to a public or private library. At the end of the operation, the scientist only need to press a button instead of going to the lab to send the data to the center. Automate the manufacturing, automate the manufacturing. So in the next slide, we're gonna talking about the IoT. So every the software will have the error, and a Moderna system is not an exception. So the error prone will occur for two reasons occasionally. So Moderna system would have the stop out, and more often they will have the overstop when multiple operators would enter in the same order. So they have a solution. They use Amazon IoT button to deploy them to own our consumable, so that's simply pressing the button so the operator could have a new material delivery. So besides the IoT diagram, so IoT, so I will explain it. So IoT application so can assign each device to a location and a material number. When they when when they push a button, an SNS message send up go to an SQS queue where they have another custom application that monitor queue and take a request out the queue. Use some lightweight analytics to optimize the daily pipeline order and grouping and then push into a final queue. So the deployment, is the integration connect to the queue, pull the material and pass them down to SAP where SAP system will going for the delivery. So here's the picture of the managed human system use case.
So one of the ERP systems that Moderna is using is the SAP S/4HANA Cloud system. So we got ourselves a free trial to try and see how it would look like. And because it's a trial version, we don't have access to obviously all the things that Moderna would, but this is something that it would look like. There is so a couple of things that we searched for the application job. So we try to schedule delivery, and as we can see here, we can see the details of it. There are various scheduling options, and then there's a parameter section. It has organizational data like where the plant is, the storage location, and the warehouse number. There are various different details and scheduling options. And so we can guess like the kinds of scheduling options that Moderna would use, and they would have obviously a much bigger log of entries here. And then there's the process purchase requisitions that we were going through. Again, with options like the plant, the purchasing group, the organization, and like the delivery date, the start, the end, the release date. Again, so we would be able to see this, and we tried to start off a project of our own based on the trial version. It was a guided trial version, so here we added details like the customer, the duration, the manager. This is just a name that we have been given for this trial version, and then we can add and we can go on to billing and the attachments and the various versions. Until now we just did like the role, the delivery organization, the work package, the item, the skills. So if we move on, like and it was doing some recalculations based upon the skills that we have selected and the effort and the resources that we're adding here. So for now, it's saying that the planned cost of our project would be 1.3k USD. We can add priorities here and like how we would want to distribute the various resources, I guess. There was a section for the attachments, but that's something that we're not very sure of right now. So yeah, so this is something close to what the cloud version for Moderna. Thank you.